Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. This week we're going to take a look at explosive movement versus shooting on the move and look at the pros and cons of both techniques. So, explosive movement. Explosive movement is a technique we can use to move from cover to cover, straight to cover, or out of the path of a threat. We want to get off the X, we got to access our weapon if we're behind the power curve. Explosive movement makes us harder to hit. What it doesn't allow us to do is return fire, or at least return fire with any degree of accuracy. The faster you move, the less accurate you're going to be. So with explosive movement, you're really at a disadvantage when it comes to shooting, but your advantage comes in the fact that you're going to be harder to hit and you're going to get to where you want to go a lot faster. Now, what are some of the drawbacks other than the fact that accurate fire is kind of out of the question? Well, if you think about a self-defense situation and you're not alone, say you're with your wife, your children, or whatever, is explosive movement really going to be an option? Can I explosively move if I need to control my 6-year-old daughter? If I don't have time to pick her up, if I don't have time to necessarily even grab her? Do I have time, or should it be, I would say, would it be reasonable to explosively move to a point of cover and then leave my kid out there? No one's going to do that. So explosive movement can be hindered by the environment itself. Taking these skills outside of the range, we need to be aware of that. If I've got my wife with me and I don't have time to key her into the fact that there's a threat, I don't have time to get her attention, I don't have time to do anything. I can grab her and start to move, but am I going to be able to move as fast dragging my wife as I am moving by myself? Absolutely not. And then there's the fact that she may be hesitant to move because she doesn't even understand what's going on. You're the only one that's recognized the threat thus far. Now, I can key her into the fact that, got the gun, whatever you got to say, but she has to turn, she has to process through that, and then she has to be like, okay, what are we doing? So explosive movement can be hindered by the environment, it can be hindered by the people you're with. Think about being in a hallway or on a stairwell. Is explosive movement going to be beneficial to you? Absolutely not. Or, if it is, it's going to be hindered by the fact that the environment is less than ideal, so to speak. So is it a good technique? It's an absolutely great technique, but it does have context. It can't be used across the board. It is one tool where there are multiple tools to address the same problem. Now, shooting on the move, where is that beneficial? Well, kind of one of the cons to explosive movement is defense of a third party. One of the pros of shooting on the move is defense of a third party. I can grab my daughter, present my weapon, and shoot one-handed. Is it going to be as accurate? No. Am I going to be able to shoot as fast? Absolutely not. But am I going to be able to deliver rounds on my threat? Yes, you are. You're going to be able to put fire downrange and force him to rethink his plan. Maybe you're going to force him to seek cover. Maybe you're going to force him to seek concealment, or maybe you're going to force him to disengage completely. Maybe the presentation of the firearm alone will stop the problem. We can't count on that. We can't count on any of these things. So shooting on the move, it's going to be slower. When should we shoot on the move? When we need to put rounds downrange if there's no cover available, or if moving to cover isn't possible at that time, be it grabbing your wife, your kid, your 80-year-old grandfather, your 80-year-old father, what have you. You find yourself in a situation where you're not able to move as fast as you want to, or where maybe moving isn't even possible. Think back to that hallway or that stairwell or in between two parked cars. Can we regress from the threat? Can we aggress the threat? Situation is going to dictate. When should you advance on a threat? My personal opinion is if I'm in an open field or an open parking lot or in a situation where cover is not anywhere close to me and I'm already behind the curve getting my gun up or getting my gun out, getting into the fight, I can press the threat. That's aggression. That's going to force him backwards, hopefully. What also it's going to do is it's going to increase my chances of getting hits. Does it increase his ability to hit me? Absolutely. What about the situation? Is he armed with a knife? Is he armed with a bat? Is he armed with a club? Is he armed with a gun? All these variables have to factor into this. It'd be very easy for me to just put up a paper target with absolutely no context whatsoever and work on, okay, we need to advance. Okay, now let's work on going back. We need to think about context. Is it wise to move forward on a guy who has a knife? Depends on the situation. If I need to put my threat down and I have absolutely no cover available to me and I don't have the option of seeking cover right then, I need to put the threat down as fast as possible. Shooting on the move may be a potential advantage. Moving laterally, moving sideways, moving straight back, what have you, I'm not going to be able to move as fast, but I'm going to get bullets out there. Alright, so before I get into this, let's talk about muzzle up versus muzzle down. Which way should we do it? With the rifle or with the handgun? Situation dictates. Getting out of that range mentality, we're fighting in a 360-degree environment. Usually we want to keep our weapon orientated downrange, which in my case right now is down there. In the real world, which way is downrange? There isn't one. You can find yourself in a situation where muzzle down might not behoove you. It might not make as much sense, or it might be more dangerous. Think about being on a second floor, or maybe you've got people laying on the ground. What if you're in a bank robbery situation, or law enforcement, you're responding to an active shooter situation, you've got kids all over the deck. You can keep your weapon pointed down the hallway, you can point it at the ceiling. The weapon does not exist in a box. It isn't controlled up or down movement, left or right movement. You need to point that muzzle in the safest known direction. Sometimes that safest known direction is going to be straight up. Environmental concerns, think about snow, high grass, shrubs, vines, anything in the low environment that snag the weapon on. Same thing with muzzle up, low branches, things of that nature. Short ceilings, anything, any one of these situations. If your weapon isn't on a threat, it needs to be in the safest known direction. Is that muzzle up? Is that muzzle down? Your situation is going to depend. There's no one way to do this. I understand there's been a long time taboo against muzzle up that's existed in certain circles, but it's been completely accepted in other circles, and those two circles kind of need to come together. It's a tool. As a shooter, you need to recognize the best time to use that tool. There is no one way. All right, just to give a little bit of anecdotal demonstration for this, I'm going to run through this with the rifle and with the handgun. I'm going to be doing 9-shot strings, so 3, 3, and 3, or what have you. I'm going to have 3 positions of cover I got to move to. I'm going to do explosive movement, and I'm going to do shooting on the move, and let you guys kind of see the differences, not only in how long it takes me to do something, but in how accurate I am depending on the technique and depending on the distance with the weapon. Obviously, with the pistol, I'm going to have some problems further back. It is anecdotal evidence because it's my shooting ability today. It's 30 degrees out, a little bit of wind, shouldn't factor into it too much, but of course we all know the environment does affect our performance. One big thing to think about when you're considering working explosive movement in your training is you got to press that cardio. The further you got to run, or the more you have to run, or the more often you have to run, stop, run, stop, run, stop, run, stop, is going to affect your cardio, which is going to affect your ability to be accurate. If you're running a heaving chest, and you're using a shoulder-fired weapon, or worse, a handgun, that's going to translate to your sight picture. So that's something to consider when you're working on your own personal fitness regimen. Really working that fitness in there. Don't just lift weights. You got to get some cardio in there. You got to have that ability, that cardiovascular strength, the cardiovascular endurance to be able to do drills like this, which will definitely translate to a potential use force situation where you actually have to rely on your, to a certain degree, to a high degree, I should say, your physical ability to fight. All right. Explosive movement. All right, I'll let you judge for yourself. Explosive movement handgun. Judge for yourself. So, explosive movement, shooting on the move. We looked at explosive movement, saw my anecdotal shooting. We looked at shooting on the move, saw my anecdotal shooting. Everything in context. This is just a drill created to demonstrate shooting ability with the two skills. But they're tools, right? So can we combine them? Let's see how that goes. Combined technique. And I'll let you judge for yourself. All right, handgun skills combined. Definitely low. My last 3 rounds. So we've taken a look at the 2 techniques. Do not judge them by my shooting ability. I am not you. Get out there, run this drill yourself, run a drill like it yourself, and see which tool is going to work for you and in which situation. Same with muzzle direction. If you got to get on YouTube and look at shooting videos, if you got to talk to people who you knew in the military, or whatever you got to do your due diligence and your research, take a look at muzzle direction. Don't just take it from that one source you got it from. Actually put some research into it and find out what people are doing and why they're doing it. That's the most important question to ask. Not what they're doing necessarily, as to the why. If the why doesn't make sense, chances are it's a, well, we've always done it that way situation. That's the reason a lot of these things get passed down in firearms. Well, we've always done it that way. Well, we've always done it that way. I need to know the why to make sure it makes sense. For me, the smartest decision is always going to be to point my weapon in the area where it's least likely to injure someone I do not intend to injure. If that's straight up, it's straight up. If it's straight down, it's straight down. If it's off to the left, off to the right, low rep, extended sul, what have you, that's going to be a consideration. You can stack these skills together, you can isolate these skills, you can do whatever you have to do to build these into your personal training regimen. Shooting on the move is not going to be as fast. You're going to stay exposed longer, you're going to shoot slower because you're shooting as you're moving. But the important thing is you're moving. This was kind of an exaggerated drill because I probably wouldn't shoot and move, barring a situation that required me to, from that distance. I mean, that's 25 yards. With the handgun, 25 yards while moving is a big deal. That's why I was almost standing still on some of those shots, and I was standing still on a couple of them, just based on the nature of the situation. In real life, I probably would have used explosive movement if I had to be in that fight, and I had to fight it from right there. I would have ran, got to the closest cover, and worked my way forward, like I did when I stacked the skills. So as you can see, 2 tools, they can be combined, they can exist separately, based on the situation you find yourself in. Now I know I'm going to get some comments, maybe an email or 2, from some of my regulars about, well, how do these skills make sense for the citizen shooter? They make absolute sense for the citizen shooter. Again, no arbitrary line for training. If a citizen wants to know how to advance on a threat, I'm going to teach them. Because they may find themselves in one of those 100,000 or more possible variables in a self-defense situation where they have to advance on a threat. I'll give you just one really good example. You, your kid, bad guys on the other side. That's a situation where I would probably advance on the threat and grab my kid. That's just one static example that exists within the world of possibilities. So don't blanket statement any situation to say, well, I don't understand what context this has for a citizen. Let's think about it. When might I have to advance on a threat? When might I retreat from a threat? When might I move from cover to cover to cover to cover to cover? It just depends on the situation. There's no reason to say, well, arbitrarily you shouldn't be doing this, or I don't understand why you have that piece of gear, or I don't understand why you're focusing on this skill. All these skills should be in your toolbox, so to speak, because you never know in your situation, if your situation ever happens, what skills you're going to have to pull out. And me personally, I don't want to have to formulate a plan when that situation takes place based on skills someone told me I didn't need. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly. Ooh, that's nice and warm. Feels good. Yeah, that's my secret. Yeah, I could be wearing all the 511, all the Vertex, all the Arc'teryx, Aglite, whatever in the world, and they look down and they see the Chuck Taylors and they're like, that's not a gun guy. He doesn't have a gun. He's not armed. He just likes the tactical look. Chuck Taylors are the ultimate subterfuge. Oh my God, I'm so happy!